Well, welcome everyone. I'm Kamal Ahluwalia with Eightfold, and it's my distinct pleasure to actually get to spend some quality time with Josh Bersin. And it's always a pleasure to actually discuss what's happening in our world, the workforce, and HR world in particular. But especially these days, it's an even more useful time to actually hear what's happening, what can we learn from each other, and what are the things that everybody is deploying to, as we were discussing before we got on the air, how to live with COVID. Josh, how are you? Welcome.
I'm good. I'm healthy. Still in the same office. Everybody's seen this office a lot.
Absolutely. Have you had the time to actually sit on the couch, or have you been working around
Every
the
now
clock?
and then I take a nap. For people like me, the pandemic has been like endless amounts of work, which I love, but there's sometimes too much of it. So every now and then I have to take a little snooze.
By the way, when I see your room, all I can imagine is the sun coming in through the skylight and the warmth in the afternoon. So winter is coming. Good time to actually come visit you.
Yeah, come on up.
Hey, so you've been writing a lot about the employee experience, employees, talent marketplaces, upskilling, reskilling. Let's compare notes a little bit. What do you think is top of mind right now as you work with all the senior execs across the world in these large organizations?
Well, what people are really freaked out about right now is the hiring, the quit rate, the turnover rate. The statistics on turnover are just astounding. 40% of healthcare workers have left the profession. The quit rate data is still 4 million a month. I mean, it was 4 million in April, but it was almost 4 million in July too in the US. There are more than 14.5 million jobs open now. It was 13.5 million a month ago. So there's more jobs open. So I think most employers are really kind of like, sort of hanging onto their seats and saying, gee, how are we going to get these people to stay? And how do we get more people to join us? And therefore, what can we do to make our employee experience even better, more productive, more engaging, more attractive? In fact, I was on the phone with the New York Times guys last week, and the comment that they made was they had just come out of a CEO meeting, and the CEOs were sort of saying, we feel sort of fortunate that people come into work every day. There's a lot of agency in the workforce and a lot of power in the workforce that employers are trying to get used to.
So, I actually just got back from a trip to Europe, uh, Germany, France, UK. The thing that struck me was in a lot of cases, people were getting together just recently. There's also a lot of resilience to actually work through the issues and get going again. And in a lot of the meetings where there are a number of people from the client side, they're as happy to just spend time with each other, look at each other in the face. Our own team has been growing in Europe, and it was just, I mean, they've seen each other on Zoom, etc. But we just got together for happy hour, etc., just to get each other to meet in person.
Yeah.
Some of that we will need to replicate virtually because that engagement without work, yes, work needs to be done, but just the human touch and the personal touch is, I think, is what we lost during COVID. And it's difficult to actually keep working hard when that.
No, listen, I talk to HR people all day. I think a lot of people are just fried.
Yeah.
And they enough. 2 years is enough of this. And I think they're going to be much more tolerant for risk and just come back together. And that seems to be happening everywhere. And luckily, a lot of people are vaccinated now.
Yeah. So, what's your guidance inside the enterprise? There's been a lot of talk around talent marketplace, HCM vendors, all that, and some of it is again how to solve
Yeah.
it for everyone, right? Because some of these concepts we used to be uh, sort of preserved for the top performers or the executives, etc. But now it needs to be done for everyone.
Well, next week is the HR Tech Show, and I'm going to be giving this speech there, and I've been working on it. I mean, the big story for most companies is the employees are in charge. You can tell them what to do, but you need to let them do what they want to do too. And in the case of things like the talent marketplace, it was an interesting idea that's exploded with success. I haven't talked to a single company that hasn't been successful by opening up internal opportunities to employees. Everybody's always a little nervous about it, and it always goes better than they thought, which leads to the question of how do we train people? How do we get better data on who will be the right person for this role? How do we identify people or help people identify jobs they're in that maybe they shouldn't be in any longer? All of which are taking us in the right place. But I think this big issue of empowering people is huge. And most of the human capital systems weren't designed for that. If you look at the tradition, I won't mention the vendor names, but if you look at the traditional HCM platforms, they were designed for HR people. They were designed for IT people. They weren't designed for employees. So there's a big backflip going on in all of the vendors to build intelligent, employee-centric applications, which is a challenge. As you know, you guys are obviously big in this, but if you were an ERP vendor and you spent 10 years building payroll, that hasn't been your mindset till the last couple of years.
Right. And I think, HCM in the cloud is not enough to solve for the workforce of today, because
the funny thing, if I think back about it, everybody thought the cloud itself added value. The cloud itself means nothing. It's just a new deployment strategy. It's the way the system operates. It's the way it behaves. It's the way it uses data. It's the UI. That's what really makes a difference. I think we got a little bit too enamored with the cloud itself as a feature.
Absolutely. So one of the data points that we have from one of our clients who's rolled us out for the employees, that of all the people, and it's about 1/3, 2/3. 2/3 have an active complete profile with Eightfold, and they have applied for another role, part-time or full-time. There, the attrition has dropped to low single digits. And the other one that have built the profile but not quite done too much on engagement, there it is still in teens. But then the divide becomes very good, that it's the more of the engagement, the promise, and how these opportunities are coming to the individual without them having to always be on the alert. That is it easier for me to find something inside, or should I always be looking outside?
Right. No, I think you guys have built a system that is attractive and useful at first glance. You don't have to teach people how to use it. And the pent-up demand for internal opportunities is huge. You guys actually shared some data with me a couple months ago that roughly 60% of the hiring going on in companies is now internal, because it's so hard to bring people from the outside. So it's a massive trend. And I think the bigger, older vendors are having a little bit of a hard time getting there from here, but they will eventually. So yeah, it's and then the other part of it is we talked a little bit earlier. It improves the DEI problem of inclusion, because now you have a much more transparent way of finding opportunities. People are evaluated in a more data-oriented way, as opposed to, I know this person and therefore I'm going to go get that person into this job, as opposed to somebody over here. So it's really a change. The other thing I would say that's I think misunderstood, which I will talk more about in the big keynote next week, but companies or vendors like you that have a lot of data as well as a great platform are providing much better experiences than companies that don't have a lot of data, vendors that don't have a lot of data. If you turn on Brand X ERP and you expect it to be smart, how's it going to be smart? It doesn't have any data to be smart. It needs years of data. So there's actually going to be a really interesting trend of big HCM platforms being data companies, not just technology companies.
Right. The other thing that we learned was that barely 10% of the data that you need that is work-centric is actually sitting in the HCM system, because it's more important to understand where work is happening and how do you pull all that in a fairly automated fashion versus having these episodic things and forcing the employees to keep their profiles up to date. Because that's been a very good advancement on our side, how to actually unlock all the stuff sitting
Well,
around.
no, that's why you guys have such an interesting opportunity, because your system is designed to accommodate many, many forms of data. The typical HCM system has a great maybe analytics tool for HR data. And then if you want to really go through a big exercise, you can try to correlate business data to it. But I was just on the phone with Walmart just before that. They're just starting to get to that point. So that's absolutely critical. One of the clients of yours, Kamal, that I just talked to recently, a big bank in New York, I think you know who I'm talking about, is gone through a very amazingly fast look at their entire operations function and correlated, job roles and duplicative jobs that aren't called the same job, but actually are the same job, and correlated it to different business outcomes, and basically redoing their job architecture in months, because they have the relationship between the job data and the business data together, that I don't think they would have been able to do in a traditional HCM system.
Yeah, and I think the need that they all are calling out is, in the past, something like this would take 12, 18 months and manual work, and it'll pretty much be outdated by the time the project was finished.
I had a call yesterday with a company, a guy I know pretty well, used to work at Deloitte, who's the chief learning officer for a big company. And he said, we're going to redo our job architecture and it's going to take us 5 years. And I was
Wonderful.
thinking, no, that's not good.
So one thing that's been, actually, I wanted to check in with you, because we talked about it, I think, in the start of when the COVID had started. Clearly, everybody's job is changing, right? How we need to move forward is very different. How's Josh Person Academy doing? What's been the interest from the HR leadership to actually rethink their own jobs, not just the rest of the company?
Well, we're doing great. I mean, I just put out an article yesterday. We have 50,000 enrollments and 45,000 people in there now. So we're doing fine. We're having a blast. I think in HR, the pandemic broke the mold of being agile. I think before the pandemic, there were lots of white papers and books and various, articles about how to be agile in HR and work in cross-functional teams, but it was happening slowly. And then almost within a week from the pandemic, all sorts of HR teams got squashed together on projects that they had never worked on before together. And they managed to do work in days and weeks that would have taken months or years. So I think HR departments are becoming very agile, very fast. The problem in HR is that, there's a lot of distributed HR teams. There's recruiters, there's business partners, there's local regional VPs of HR. There's a lot of sort of functional groups around the company. And so if you think of HR itself as a little business, getting the HR team to all work together and get to know each other is a massive trend. And this is why we built the academy. And at the time I started the academy, I didn't predict that we were going to have a pandemic, but I could just tell from all the years of research that all this cross-functional work was happening slowly. It was going to happen faster. So, and then in terms of job titles, we did a project to look at job titles in HR, and they're almost meaningless. There are some very obvious ones like instructional designer or recruiter, but business partner, it means like 20 different things in different companies. So, so I think the titles there's plenty of cleanup on that we can do inside of HR too.
So as you look at all these applications, Salesforce for CRM and marketing, sales, etc., GitHub, etc., for engineering, what are all the signals that we could be bringing in to really galvanize the employee experience and actually make it more inspirational and self-directed so that they can actually be aligned with the company objectives. What are your thoughts around that? What are we missing right
Well,
now?
this is something you guys are probably working on. I mean, there's a lot of signals. These products like Microsoft Teams and Slack are capturing tons of data about behavior and time of day activity and collaboration activity. So there's all that organizational network data. If you're a software company, I'm sure you've got data on, projects and, activity and code written and lines of code and things like that. In banks, we did a big project with Bank of America. They have all sorts of data on average bank balance day by day, who's opening new deposits, how much money is coming into each branch. That data can be correlated with tenure or, org structure. I think one of the things that's going to be really interesting, and this is where I'm so excited about Eightfold, is it isn't just correlating, financial or business data to, maybe an HR program. It might have to do with the way the team is organized or the skills on that team, which are kind of hard data to get. That's becoming available too. So, I think HR systems, in general, and yours in particular, are going to become really performance-oriented platforms pretty soon here after we get back past sort of the pandemic issues.
Hopefully soon. I think Europe may have the right mindset that they want to stay open, not retract to shutting down businesses. But they are insistent that, hey, stay in your own communities. Let's intermingle a lot less and reduce the risk that way. So I've actually loved your keynotes at HR Tech because you cover so much ground so quickly. And you also have your perspective on each of these, that this is going up, this is going down, this is relevant, this is not relevant. As you look at the employee experience, and there are a lot of companies providing, good, valuable things, point solutions, all that. What would be the minimum set of solutions that if it was your company and you could pick and piece it together, what is the right solution, at least your optimal one, to start out with?
Well, I mean, it starts with the productivity systems, the tools like Teams or Salesforce or Slack or whatever. You need sort of the core there. And those have all changed so much that you don't have to buy 20 of them. Then if you're a growing company, you got to get your act together on recruiting. Otherwise, you're going to go nuts. So you need some sort of a platform for identifying, sourcing, assessing, and then going through the recruiting process. Right now, everybody's, that's a business critical issue. That isn't a sideline. That is a core issue. And some companies, because they have such high turnover, it's a never ending process. If you're in healthcare or retail, I mean, you're always recruiting. It's not just right now.
Yep.
The third is, some form of meaningful, intelligent feedback systems where employees can make suggestions, send advice, take surveys, communicate with each other. The CEO or the head of a group can get good feedback quickly. Some companies use their collaboration tool for that, but all of the survey vendors are building better systems there, and that's a pretty important thing to have. And those are becoming embedded apps. And then there's the whole issue of content and learning. We used to call them learning management systems, and they were very structured and formal and business workflow kind of oriented. Now it's that plus just get a bunch of stuff out there so people can share it. Here's a sales deck I used that really worked. Here's a presentation on something that I fixed yesterday that I think all you guys could learn. Here's, what a customer just told me about our products that I want to share with you because I don't have time to write it all down, but why don't you just watch the video? Those kinds of things are massive. I think I'm going to talk about this in the speech I give next week, but what we've learned from the creator economy, the TikToks, the Instagrams, all the massive growth of that space is coming into corporations. I don't want to hire a designer to develop a communication program about our open enrollment and then wait 3 months for them to do it and $50,000 later. I just want to get it out there. So there's a massive need for better communication systems. And then the final thing is the thing where you guys are really big is, give me some intelligence about the organization that I don't know. Teach me some things that are not obvious to me as a leader about how we can be more effective as we move into the new thing that we're doing, whatever that may be, which every company has that. And give me some insights onto who are the people that are going to be most appropriate for those new opportunities. And then the core stuff, payroll and applicant tracking and learning management, I actually think it's kind of becoming a commodity. I hate to say that, but it's not really value add so much.
Yeah, and actually fortunately, we have customers all over the place, all continents. Input was to actually be holistic. Like Talent Marketplace solves a use case, but then what about the full-time career pathing? What about mentors? What about the learning content and the learning path that's tied to the career path? What about the aspirations that an individual has? And also learning from the work we are doing with veterans. By the way, the platform will be rolled out this fall. Mm-hmm. So that's starting to work is how to make it equitable so that everybody feels good about investing more time, because some of the jobs are genuinely not coming back. So that is a serious issue, which I think has accelerated everybody's interest, that the operating model is changing and the time pressure is definitely on now. What would have taken 5 years and would have been acceptable now needs to be done in 6 to 12 months. And
one of the points, I think you made a point I wanted to just key on. The talent marketplace looks like a product category, but it's not. It's a whole platform. The talent marketplace is a small piece of a much bigger thing going on, which is creating transparency and mobility and intelligence in what we used to call talent management.
Yep.
I hate the word talent management because it sounds so old-fashioned. We need a new name for it. Talent intelligence is the best name we could come up with. But and so I think the talent mobility or the talent marketplace vendors are quickly realizing, oh, this is also recruiting. It's also learning. It's also career. It's also skills. It's also, it's also third-party data. It's, everybody's going into sort of the same place. And to some degree, I feel like you guys are kind of where the puck is going in a sense.
I have another question for you. A lot of talk these days about, do we really need a 4-year college degree? And there are clearly lots of jobs where it's not needed. Now, that 4-year college degree was a proxy for something. In your mind, when you see somebody with a college degree, what does that mean to you? And what is that needed? Or in a lot of roles, what can be...
You want my honest opinion?
Yep.
Okay, I know there's people online here, but I'll be honest. Okay, so somebody with a college degree, for me at least, as a white-collar guy, knows how to write, knows how to read, knows about the world, knows data. I'm not going to have to teach them how to use Excel or how to use Word or how to write a sentence. I know that. They probably have been around the block so that they kind of know what the world is like. And they probably have some good idea of what they like doing, so they really know something about their own interests and careers. It doesn't tell me very much. And if they went to engineering school, I know they're probably good at math and science. And if they went to social science, they're probably good at communications and writing. And those are things I know. As far as the pedigree, doesn't mean much at all. In fact, I have found that the most highly pedigreed employees are the most entitled, and I actually don't like hiring them. Now, I went to Cornell, and I have an Ivy League degree, so I'm guilty of the same thing. But I'm a little bit more of a scrappy type person. So I do think there's a little bit of entitlement that happens in some colleges. Those people can go work for investment banks. They can go work for somebody else. I'm not that interested in that personally because of the kind of work that we do. But some companies like that. Some companies really see it as a pedigree. I don't think that's gone away. It's becoming less important, but it's still there. And then there's the issue of, in a lot of organizations, I'm a Yale guy, so I want people from Yale because I want people that kind of are my people. I think that's still out there. Certainly in the, in fact, it sort of really bothers me that if you look at the federal government, how many of those people went to Yale and Harvard? Come on already. I mean, enough. How do we stop that? I don't know how to stop it. I guess Biden is a good example, but he's rare. There's a lot of that, pedigree bias built into our country that, may never go away. Plus the universities like that because that's their brand. So, they feed on that. So for me personally, it doesn't mean as much, but, I think it's a reality of the world. But
Yeah.
to anybody who doesn't have a great college degree, don't let it hold you back. There's plenty of examples of really successful people that didn't go to Harvard, Yale, or Stanford, and they did great.
Absolutely. And we're learning a lot working with 110.org because some of the largest employers are on it and they're all rethinking their job descriptions because a lot of these absolute requirements are no longer absolute. And to some extent, both the talent marketplace inside as well as what can be unlocked outside from a learning perspective, because at best it was a class or two, right? Almost everybody with a couple of years of some sort of formal education with a couple of right directed within the context of the domain. I think there are more capable people in the workforce than we realize. And it's a great opportunity to actually help them.
The longer I work, the older I get, the more I realize that the number one criteria for success is grit. It's hard work and willingness to challenge yourself and willingness to learn. And, maybe you got that in college, maybe you didn't, but so, that's a learned trait that some people have. And it always seems to win out in the end. I was just watching Muhammad Ali last night, the movie about Muhammad Ali. Talk about a guy with grit. Look what he did.
Floats like a butterfly, stings like a bee. Josh, how many classes do you have in Josh Bersin Academy teaching people grit?
Well, it's kind of threaded through the whole thing. I don't know how you teach it. I think you reward it and you talk about it and you try to demonstrate it. I think another big thing in the job market for people looking for jobs is to overcome your own fear of failure. We're all living longer. We're going to have longer careers. We're all going to have flops. We're all going to have projects that fail. We're going to have companies that we work for that didn't work out. I got laid off. I had a couple of companies where I left, sort of like out of just boredom. I've had lots of periods in my career where I felt like I was either flatlining or going down. But that's just okay. You just keep going and things work out fine in the long run.
By the way, okay, we'll run out of time. I do want to hear I didn't hear about anything flopping in your career.
Oh, I got passed over for promotion. I mean, I was not really a high performer in any of the companies I worked in until I was probably in my late 40s or early 50s. I was sort of a mid-level guy, an engineer, sales, customer service, marketing person. I never really understood the sacrifice it took to get ahead in some companies early in my career. I was more interested in my kids. And, my personal journey has always been to do work that I like, because if I like it, I tend to be good at it, and then I tend to do more of it. And then, we've had a few hiccups here and there in our company.
Oh, fantastic. Look, thank you. I think we're almost at time, but really appreciate both you taking the time as well as sharing your personal perspective as well. And I am looking forward to HR Tech and your keynote next week.
Thank you, Kamal. I've got lots of interesting things to share. Thank you for the time today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you.